Welcome to the studio. We're joined here today by Geoff, who's here to talk about climate change. Geoff, haven't we been talking about climate change for a bit long now?
I think climate change, there's so much information that's available about it that people are talking about different aspects of climate change, and a lot of people are talking at different levels as well. I think people speak at a high level about what's happening on a global. More people are speaking about what's happening in a local community, and a lot of people are also talking about how it impacts them and how they can make change at their own home or at their own business. So it is spoken about, but I don't think that the information is really getting through in a clear way to all of those people.
So what's this clear information that you would like the average Australian to be aware of?
I think to keep it simple is the best way to get to the general public, mum and dad, the kids, what they can do to make changes, but they really need to understand what global change is and why it's so critical at the moment, because we're right on the cusp of it going too far and you can't turn back the clock. So the change needs to be immediate that people make, and I don't think people fully understand that. So for me, in simple terms, climate change is that the earth is getting warmer. The gases that are emitted by driving your car are starting to create a thick blanket in the atmosphere of the Earth. So it's changing the temperature of the Earth, which means polar caps melt, changes the sea levels.
So you're saying that mum and dad should stop driving cars?
No, what I'm saying is that I think everyone should make a small difference to stop the impact that we're having, and I think that it's about educating those people that lots of people doing small things can make a real change, that it's not such an impact on their lives.
The latest science that I've heard is science going on about a 90% cut by 2050, but you're talking about small changes. Why should we, these things that we should be working towards just seem way too big? Shouldn't we just give up and enjoy the ride?
I think if you're serious about your children's future and your children's children's future, which everyone is, you need to make changes now. And the generation, there's lots of different generations that are living on this planet. It's up to each generation to do the right thing for the next generation to fight. And I think that it may seem like a massive task on a global level, and that's why we have people thinking on a global level, but action needs to happen on a small level. Local people, local communities making small changes which are effective, which are achievable as well.
So if I change my light bulb, is that going to stop climate change?
I think it's more than changing the light bulb, it's the fact that you're changing your mindset to want to change the light bulb. And if your mindset has changed and your paradigm has changed about being a bit more focused on this earth that we live in, that it's a living organism, we need to look after it. If we don't look after it, there's not going to be much left. And science tells us that that's the case.
But isn't this, just pipe dream stuff? Because opinion polls have shown that all Australians care about environmental issues, and that's wonderful. But our carbon footprint as a nation continues to increase. So how's telling people and getting people concerned about climate change actually going to do anything?
I think if you look at history in the past, and you can take, for example, apartheid and racism, the changes that we've experienced in there on a global level have been massive, and there's been a massive shift in people's thinking about that. So that has changed on a global area that was ingrained for centuries of abuse against Indigenous people. So it can be done. It's a fact that it can be done in different areas, and I think that communicating that to people in the right way is important.
So you're comparing apartheid with climate change?
I mean, comparing the paradigm and the people's thinking with the people's thinking now. This is another world issue that we face, and there'll be continual world issues down the track.
So you're saying that someone who doesn't do something about climate change is just as bad as a racist. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, really what I'm saying is that people need to be aware of their own environment. People need to be conscious of how they can make a change, and also giving them the will. And look, not everyone is going to have the will to make climate change. Not everyone had the will to change their view on other races. But the majority is what changes and shapes the world. And when the majority stands up and wants to be counted and makes changes in political governments, makes changes in their personal beliefs and makes changes in their homes by changing a light bulb, that's when world change happens.
Well, we've already, Australia's already changed all their light bulbs, and we've changed our government, which is the pro-climate change government. What more do we need to do?
I think it's constant improvement, constant reinforcement of all those initiatives, holding everyone accountable, holding government accountable, holding people accountable.
Accountable to what? What's the solution that we're working towards here?
I think you do have to look at the scientific basis of it, and some of the world's best leading experts are able to give us some of that information. We need to translate that into something that can work, something that's effective.
Give it to our viewers now. What, in simple terms, what's the solution to climate change?
I think the solution is to promote and influence world change, and that's done on a number of different levels, as I discussed earlier, starting with getting governments to change their way of thinking, getting governments to realise that we the people think it's really important that this changes, because they mightn't care about my children to that degree, but I certainly care about my children, and I want them to have a great world to live in for the future and for their children as well. And it's taken a long time to get to this critical point in degrading the earth, and once it goes past a certain point, it's going to take centuries to try and get it back. So if we don't act now and make change now, we'll lose that opportunity.
And so is what you're talking about some sort of social engineering, and we're talking about people can't drive cars anymore, and people can't use electricity, and solar panels on everyone's roofs, What can you actually describe what this future looks like?
I think what the future is people, one, being more aware of the world environment and how they personally impact the world environment. What technologies out there, because there are a lot of new technologies that can benefit us. Also, how to live more sustainably, I think, is very important. How transport affects the food that we choose, how that affects global climate change through transport. For example, buying bananas from overseas, there's lots of transportation costs, which is carbon emissions. So buying locally, and that's good for your own country, good for your own community. It's really going back to what I'd call an old-fashioned way of living, is being self-sustainable and living, not so much living off the land, but living within your means, both as a resource, a country, and for your own financial benefit, not being a mass consumer, buying things that you don't necessarily need, living a bit more conservatively, I suppose.
Great. Well, thanks for your time today, Geoff. That was Geoff talking about climate change and going backwards and a future with no bananas.